Your feelings are not your forecast. Too many people wake up each day ruled by how they feel. They let their emotions dictate their outlook, their choices, and their confidence. But feelings are temporary. They're like the weather, always changing, always shifting, and never meant to define the climate of your destiny. You might feel tired, overlooked, unqualified, or forgotten, but none of those feelings have the authority to determine what God has already declared over your life. Just because you feel weak doesn't mean you are defeated. Just because you feel lost doesn't mean you have no direction. Feelings are real, but they are not final. Think about it. The storm may be raging in your mind, but the storm does not control the shore. The waves may rise, but the tide still turns. Life will hit you with seasons where everything inside screams, "It's over," but faith whispers, "Not yet." That's why you can't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. If you make choices based on what you feel right now, you might forfeit what's waiting for you tomorrow. Feelings will tell you to quit. Faith says, keep going. Feelings will convince you you're stuck. Faith says, you're just being stretched. See, the enemy loves to use feelings as fuel for frustration. He wants you to magnify the moment instead of the mission. He wants you to stare at the pain instead of the purpose. But when you understand that emotions are signals, not sentences, you learn how to move through them without being mastered by them. You can acknowledge how you feel without letting it anchor your destiny. You can say, yes, I'm hurting, but I'm still hoping. I'm tired, but I'm still trusting. I'm scared, but I'm still standing. When you walk by faith, you learn that your forecast doesn't come from the clouds of your emotions. It comes from the promises of God. Feelings fluctuate, but His word stands forever. You might wake up discouraged, but His mercies are new every morning. You might feel unseen, but He knows your name. You might feel behind, but He's the one who orders your steps. So even when you don't feel strong, you can still walk in strength. Even when you don't feel worthy, you can still walk in purpose. Even when you don't feel joyful, you can still walk in gratitude. Emotions can tell you what's happening inside of you, but faith reminds you of what's happening beyond you. When the world tells you that you're stuck, faith tells you that you're being shaped. When fear tells you to stop, faith says it's time to step forward. That's why your victory doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on what you believe. Your feelings may be the wind, but your faith is the anchor. Don't let passing emotions write a permanent story. What you feel is a moment. What you believe is your movement. And when you choose faith over feelings, that's when your life begins to shift, your mindset begins to rise, and your heart begins to believe again that you're not stuck anymore. Delay is not denial. One of the hardest lessons to learn in life is that waiting does not mean rejection. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it never will. We live in a world that wants everything instantly, instant success, instant results, instant answers. But the truth is, destiny doesn't move at the speed of your emotions. It moves at the speed of divine timing. There are blessings that take time to build, doors that require preparation before they can open, and promises that demand maturity before they can be received. God is not ignoring you, He's preparing you. What you call a delay, heaven calls development. Sometimes the waiting room is where your character grows stronger. The delay is not there to frustrate you, it's there to form you. You may think you're ready for what you've been praying for, but if the door opened too soon, the weight of the blessing might crush you instead of lift you. God loves you too much to promote you before you're prepared. He's aligning people, places, and opportunities behind the scenes. You can't see it yet, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface. Your season of silence might actually be the season where your roots are taking hold. Think of Joseph, who had a dream of greatness but ended up in a pit and then in prison. To the natural eye, it looked like delay, but in reality, it was divine setup. Each delay positioned him for his destiny. When the time was right, the same man who was forgotten became the one who was favored. God's delay is never wasted time, it's preparation time. The waiting builds trust. The silence strengthens faith. The pause teaches patience. Every delay has a design. When you understand that, you stop panicking and start trusting. You stop asking why me and start asking what are you teaching me. You realize that the delay is not a sign of denial, it's a sign of divine order. Maybe you've been praying for an open door, but God knows if that door opened right now, the room behind it would not be ready, or you wouldn't be ready to walk through it. The waiting period is God's way of aligning the right time with the right heart. Faith isn't tested when things happen fast. It's tested when things seem slow. Anyone can believe when the answer shows up tomorrow, but it takes real faith to keep believing when nothing seems to move for years. That's the kind of faith that builds depth, endurance, and trust. You might be waiting for a breakthrough, a relationship, a healing, or a new opportunity. It's okay to wait, but wait with expectation, wait with worship, wait knowing that God's timing is not late, it's perfect. Every delay has purpose, every pause has power, and when that moment finally comes, you'll look back and realize that the waiting didn't withhold the blessing. It prepared you to carry it. What looks like being stuck might be divine preparation. Sometimes, when life feels like it has slammed the brakes, when doors refuse to open and opportunities seem frozen, it's not because you failed, it's because you're being fashioned. What you call stuck might actually be the season where God is doing His deepest work in you. Preparation often looks like stillness. The soil doesn't move while the seed grows roots. The roots expand quietly, unseen, strengthening the foundation so that when the fruit appears, it can stand the weight of its own blessing. You might not see progress, but that doesn't mean progress isn't happening. God does some of His best work behind the curtain of delay. We often pray for elevation, but forget that preparation comes before promotion. Before David ever held the crown, he held a shepherd's staff. Before Moses ever led a nation, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. Before Jesus began his ministry, he spent years in silence and 40 days in the desert. Preparation seasons are rarely glamorous. They're hidden, quiet, and often uncomfortable. But it's in those places that God refines your character, shapes your vision, and strengthens your spirit. What looks like confinement is actually construction. What feels like stagnation is really formation. Sometimes God will slow you down not because He's punishing you, but because He's positioning you. The pause is purposeful. You might be wondering why that job hasn't opened, why that relationship ended, or why that door keeps closing. But maybe God is protecting you from what you can't yet handle or redirecting you toward what truly aligns with your calling. It's easy to mistake divine preparation for divine punishment, but if you look closer, you'll see that the wilderness is often the classroom of destiny. God doesn't waste seasons, He uses them. While you feel stuck, heaven is still moving. Plans are unfolding that you don't even know about. People are being prepared to meet you. Places are being arranged to receive you. And opportunities are being built with your name on them. The problem is, we judge our progress by what we can see, while God measures it by what He's developing within us. You might think nothing's changing, but your patience is growing, your resilience is deepening, your faith is maturing. That's divine preparation. He's teaching you to trust the process even when you can't trace the plan. Every great move of God begins with a season of stillness. Before the breakthrough comes the build-up. Before the calling comes the conditioning. So don't despise where you are just because it feels slow. You are not stuck. You are being strengthened. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. God is not withholding something from you. He's working something in you. And when the time is right, what He has been building in private will be revealed in power. When that door opens, you'll realize you were never stuck at all. You were simply being shaped for the stage He prepared for you. You carry resurrection power. That means there is something inside you that cannot be defeated, something divine that can bring life to what looks dead. Too often, people walk around acting like they're powerless, like they're victims of circumstance, like they're defined by failure, like their best days are behind them. But the truth is, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is alive and active within you. That's not just a poetic line, it's a promise. It means that no matter how dark the situation seems, you have the authority to rise again. You have power over despair, over fear, over the voice that says, it's over. Because with God in you, it's never over. When the stone was rolled away from the tomb, it wasn't just an event in history. It was a declaration of what's possible for every believer. The resurrection didn't just change eternity, it changed right now. It means that defeat is temporary, that endings can become beginnings, and that what looks finished can still flourish. You might feel buried, but buried things and planted things look the same until life starts to sprout. If God can bring life out of death, He can bring purpose out of pain, progress out of pressure, and joy out of sorrow. The same Spirit that conquered the grave lives in you, so how can you ever say you're stuck? There's a reason the enemy fights you so hard. It's because he knows what's inside you. He knows there's resurrection power waiting to be released. He can't stop that power, so he tries to make you forget it's there. He distracts you with discouragement, makes you doubt your worth, and convinces you to settle for surviving instead of rising. But you've got to remember who you are and whose power is working within you. You are not powerless and you are not defeated. You are a carrier of divine strength. You have authority to speak life where there's been death, to call hope out of hopelessness, and to command peace in the middle of chaos. When you start to see yourself through that truth, everything shifts. You stop waiting for someone else to rescue you because you realize that the rescuer already lives inside you. You stop letting circumstances dictate your joy because you know joy is part of your inheritance. You stop calling things dead when you serve a God who specializes in resurrection. You can look at your broken dreams, your empty bank account, your weary heart, and say, this might look over, but it's not over. Because resurrection power doesn't depend on conditions, it depends on the Creator. So lift your faith. Speak life over yourself. Remind your situation who lives in you. The tomb was empty so your heart could be full. The stone was rolled away so you could walk free. You don't have to wait for Sunday morning to experience resurrection. You carry it every day. The power that raised Jesus is the same power that will raise you out of anything trying to hold you down. Change your declaration. What you speak carries power. Words are not just sounds, they are seeds. Every time you open your mouth, you are planting something in the soil of your life. The question is, are you planting faith or are you planting fear? Are you declaring defeat or are you declaring victory? What you consistently say shapes what you eventually see. The tongue can build or break, heal or harm, create or confine. That's why it's so important to align your words with what you believe, not what you feel. Your feelings may shift, but your declaration can stay firm. When you speak life, even in lifeless situations, you invite divine power to move on your behalf. Many people trap themselves with their own words. They keep repeating, I can't make it. "I'll never get out of this. Things will never change." And before long, those words start shaping their reality. The more you say you can't, the more your mind accepts limitation as truth. But when you shift your declaration, you shift your direction. When you begin to speak faith instead of frustration, hope instead of hopelessness, everything around you starts to respond. The atmosphere of your life begins to align with the words that leave your mouth. You can't speak defeat and expect victory. You can't declare failure and expect success. You must learn to speak what you seek until you see what you've said. Even when everything around you contradicts what you're believing for, keep declaring it. Your declaration is not denial, it's direction. You're not ignoring reality, you're declaring a greater truth over it. David looked at Goliath and didn't declare how big the giant was. He declared how great his God was. Your words don't have to describe your situation, they should define your expectation. When you say, "I am more than a conqueror," you're not boasting in your strength. You're agreeing with what God already said about you. When you declare, "I will overcome, I will rise again, this is not the end for me," you're activating faith that moves mountains. The power of life and death is in the tongue, and that means every conversation you have with yourself matters. The things you whisper in private are just as powerful as the things you shout in public. If you constantly criticize yourself, you'll crush your own confidence. But if you start affirming what's true, your mindset begins to shift. You start walking like someone who believes in victory, talking like someone who expects breakthrough, and thinking like someone who knows they're not stuck anymore. So instead of echoing your pain, echo God's promise. Stop rehearsing the problem and start releasing prophetic power through your speech. Speak healing over your body, speak clarity over your mind, speak strength over your spirit. Even if you don't see it yet, declare it anyway. Faith-filled words have creative force. They build the future before your eyes can perceive it. When your mouth agrees with God's word, miracles begin to manifest. So, open your mouth, raise your declaration, and let your words prophesy your way forward. Your breakthrough is someone else's roadmap. Every victory you experience, every obstacle you overcome, and every storm you survive isn't just about you. It's about the people who will come after you. The pain you've endured, the lessons you've learned, and the faith you've fought to keep are all pieces of a story that someone else desperately needs to hear. When you rise, you show others that rising is possible. When you break free, you light a path for those who are still bound. Your testimony becomes a trail for the next traveler. What once felt like a burden becomes a blueprint for another person's freedom. We live in a world that often celebrates personal success, but forgets the power of shared strength. The truth is, God never blesses you just for you. He blesses you so you can become a blessing. Every breakthrough carries a responsibility. When you come out of your struggle, it's not just so you can sit in comfort. It's so you can reach back and pull someone else out of the fire. The same God who lifted you wants to use your story as evidence that He can do it again. Your life becomes living proof that faith works, that grace restores, and that hope still wins. Think about it. Moses didn't just cross the Red Sea for himself. He opened a path for an entire nation. David didn't just defeat Goliath to prove his strength. He showed a generation what happens when you trust God over fear. Your deliverance carries influence. Every time you overcome, you shift the atmosphere for others who are watching you. People are inspired by your endurance. They see your scars and realize healing is possible. They hear your story and find courage to write their own. Sometimes we go through things we don't understand, not realizing that our survival is going to become someone else's strategy. You might have cried through nights nobody saw, but your persistence is giving hope to hearts you'll never meet. You might not even know who's watching, but someone is silently drawing strength from your example. The way you kept believing when you could have quit is preaching louder than any sermon ever could. Your breakthrough becomes a message without words, a living testimony that says, if God did it for me, He can do it for you. That's why you can't hide your story. Don't be ashamed of what you came out of. Don't silence your testimony because it's messy. The mess is what makes it real. The pain is what gives it power. Someone is waiting on your authenticity. They don't need a perfect example, they need a living one. When you share your journey, you invite others to believe again. You remind them that no season lasts forever, no failure is final, and no situation is beyond redemption. So, when you rise, reach back. When you heal, help. When you overcome, open the way. Your breakthrough is not just for you. It's a roadmap for the ones who are still finding their way out.